everybody. My name is Brad Muniz and welcome to Sobel Insights. Sobel Insights is a series where we provide some brief information on various topics. We try to keep the sessions to 15 minutes. At this time, we do not offer CPE. The topic today is self-insurance for small and medium-sized entities. Our speaker is Peter Rosky with Meeker Sharkey, who we work with a lot. So Peter, I will tell you, everybody hears and self-insurance and they get very scared of it. They don't want to be, all of a sudden there's catastrophic illness is going to affect their company, and there's a lot of uncertainty around this and lack of clarity. And I think that it's a vehicle that people should always be considering, because healthcare and all insurance costs are always increasing. And why should a company consider transitioning to a self-funded arrangement?
Well, thanks for having us, Brad. The market has dramatically changed. So a couple reasons an employer of any size really should consider self-funding is a couple reasons. One, they reduce cost over the long term. It's just historically proven you're going to save money when you go self-funded. Yes, you could have some bad years in there, but over the long term, you will reduce your costs. You reduce your costs in a couple different ways. Is you pull yourself out of that high premium tax that came along with the ACA healthcare reform bill. You also, especially here in the New York, New Jersey metro market, you pull yourself out of the state requirements and regulations, mandated benefits of the state. You also gain insight and control over your own benefits, which you don't have when you're fully insured. And the market has dramatically changed over the years. So in your introduction, you talked about the fear of self-funding. Self-funding was, originally when I started in this business 30 years ago, really meant for employer groups, large Fortune 500 or maybe down as small as 250 employees. But the market has really responded and developed programs designed for employers as small as 5 in New Jersey. So a group can go self-funded as small as 5. Meeker Sharkey, for example, is a brokerage with 32 employees, and we're self-funded, and we've been managing our own benefits for a long time that way. So the market has developed products that will alleviate a lot of that risk and fear that an employer would have to get hit with that catastrophic claim.
It was interesting. You made a couple of comments. You said in the long run, you show that you're going to save money. It almost reminds me of, and I'm not trying to say it's the same, but the stock market. People are afraid of the stock market, but if you look at it over the years, it's proven to be more lucrative than just putting the money in the mattress, which is never lucrative.
Yeah, exactly.
But the other thing that you started hitting on is the size of the employers. I mean, if you could just summarize again, how large or how small should a company be to transition to a self-funded arrangement? I mean, there's really no limitations, would you say, or there might be a limitation on small size?
The bottom limit is 5 employees in New Jersey. It varies by state, but here in New Jersey, Aetna has a product, for example, that goes down to as small as 5 employees. And what that small employer, so an employer group of 5 to 50 employees, for example, should consider something that's called level funded. And what that is the insurance carrier will develop a fixed maximum monthly premium that the employer would pay. You're self-insured, you're responsible for all your own claims on a month-to-month basis, but you're paying at this fixed maximum. You and the insurance carrier and your broker are tracking those month-to-month claims, and you're either building or creating a deficit or surplus of claims reserves. So if you have some bad months, you're going to tap into that claims reserve. At the end of the year, you're going to do something, maybe in your industry, call it a true up or something, right? You look at how much you've spent in, and they target it to what your maximum expectation is of claims. And if there's claims dollars left over, depending on the insurance carrier that you choose, you'll either get 50% of that surplus back, and you can get it in a check. You can get it applied towards future administrative costs, for example, or others will just 3 months after that renewal date, we'll cut you a check for the surplus. So in good years, you benefit and you receive that money back. In bad years, you've already been set to pay towards your maximum liability. So you know what your worst case scenario is. So if you're currently fully insured in that small group market and you're paying a rate dependent on your employees' ages and et cetera, you have no negotiations, you have no control, you're just going to pay. And if you're a healthy group and utilizing very little claims, the insurance company's keeping that profit.
Right.
So if it makes sense from a small employer, if that maximum is equal to or better than what you're paying today on a fully insured basis, it makes sense to go self-funded from a small group basis. When you're in that 50 to, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead. No, when you're in the 50, go ahead, please.
When you're in that 50 employee to 250 employee range, that mid-size level, there's a product called a captive. And what a captive is allowing mid-size employers to pool together, to purchase stop loss together, to spread out that risk together, to negotiate renewals together, and get the purchasing power of other combined entities. So that's another way of easing into self-funding, but sharing risk with others and having purchasing power with other employers. So you present yourself to the market, as a larger entity when you're pooled with other employer groups. And then obviously when you're over 250 employees, you can do what's more traditional self-insurance. And your protection there is what's called stop loss insurance. So depending on your size of your group and your ability, your financial ability and strength, you can set a limit of, it's called catastrophic risk or stop loss. How much in any given month are you going to pay for a claim? So if a group is set at a $50,000 stop loss, if you're any one claim, that's an individual stop loss or an aggregate stop loss, your overall group exceeds $50,000 in any given month, the reinsurance will kick in and the most you'll pay is going to be that, whatever that set limit is. And that's determined based on your size and financial strength.
And you just mentioned, first I want to say great presenter because you knew how to rope me back in by saying true up. And if you say debit and credit every once in a while, you'll get my attention completely. But you mentioned self-funded and the self-funded captive. That's the same thing when you were mentioning that?
Yeah, the self-funded captive is what's designed for that mid-size employer, that 50 to 250 employee size range. And it's kind of a unique product where the employer is actually the owner of the insurance company. So when you join a captive, you're actually making a capital investment into that insurance company, and you are the owner of that insurance company with the other participating employers. So you're in the captive situation, an employer is going to be responsible for all of their own smaller claims. You're then going to spread the risk, say any claim below $50,000, you as the employer will be responsible to pay that claim. Any claim from $50,000 to $150,000 will be spread among the other, let's call 100 other employer groups that have purchased into this captive. And then you're spreading that risk among all your peers. And that allows you then to buy a higher limit of stop loss insurance to reduce your costs. You're then buying stop loss insurance at a much higher level at a much cheaper price because you're pooled with everybody else and you're going to that reinsurance company as a 20,000 life employer group instead of your 250 or 100 employee group.
Well, you really pulled together a lot of the terminology for me because self-funded captive, or it sounds like you're creating your own little insurance vehicle, your insurance company, and you're hedging, as the insurance companies do, they hedge. They spread risk amongst different people, groups, entities. And I know that there are captives out there that aren't just health insurance, that relate to liability insurance, self-storage client that is part of a captive. So that's great. So So the fear people, I'm sure, have is two things I can think of. One is, IBNR, incurred but not reported type of stuff that we have to worry about that in financial statements. But, people say, well, now I'm part of a pool. Do I want to be? Well, in all insurance, you're part of a pool in some way. But are there other concerns a company should consider before moving to self-funded?
Sure, there's several. Self-funding is not meant for everybody. So some of the things you should consider before you self-fund is initially your cash flow. Do you have enough cash flow? Can you bear the ups and downs of the monthly claims fluctuations? It's much easier to budget and plan your finances if you know you're going to pay this fixed monthly premium.
Right.
Under self-funding, you could have a $10,000 a month, you could have a $100,000 month, and you need the cash flow to be able to absorb those things. You also need the kind of financial strength or whatever to discipline to not spend the money on a good month.
Right.
and put it away for a rainy day.
And some insurance companies will work with you with creating your own, not reserve. That's a bad word for me to use with an insurance person, but to create your own reserve account that you're putting the money into.
Sinking fund, if you want to.
Right. If you normally spend $10,000 a month, but with this new fund, you're going to pay $7,500. We'll put the other $2,500 into the reserve, into your sinking fund account. Okay. Oh yeah, trust me, it's the same thing as estimated tax payments. When you say to the client, "Have you made your?" No, I didn't. Okay, let's do withholding instead. Well, you can't. Okay, so no, that's great.
It is the exact same. Yeah, and
it's all.
And in the first couple months, if you go self-insured, the first couple months you're going to look like a hero because of a claims lag. So any large claims take up to as long as 3 months to process through the system. So when you flip that switch and you go self-insured, you're going to barely see any claims in the first 3 months, and you're going to think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then month 4, those big claims that occurred are going to all start catching up. So you need to make sure you have that money on the side.
So that's where you get the phrase I came up with: incurred but not reported.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
One other big key issue with self-funding: if you're not in a level funded plan or a pooled plan like a captive, the stop loss insurance or that catastrophic insurance at renewal can do a couple things that could be very detrimental. It's called a laser, and what a laser is if you have a one particular employee who has some expensive ongoing illness, cancer, heart disease, advanced diabetes, something along those lines, dialysis, the stop loss insurance carrier can come back to the employer group and say, we're going to renew your insurance at this 5% rate increase, but we're going to do that for everybody at that same $50,000 stop loss level for everyone except for Pete. Pete has, I'll knock on wood, Pete has cancer. Pete's running us $150,000 a year in claims. If you want that 5% renewal at a $50,000 stop loss, you're going to pay the claims on Pete up to $150,000 a year. So you've just taken on substantially more risk on one individual employee, and that's called a laser. And if that's one of the greatest risks, if you go self-insured, to be lasered at renewal, that is just taking on a lot more risk than an employer has, budgeted for. And
Right.
Looking at some of those captives or looking at some other pooled insurance or relying on your consultant to go out and find a stop loss insurance carrier and be able to negotiate a no new laser type of contract. Which brings up another quick point is the time to self-insure is when you get that good renewal. Right? We had a client, we were talking to them about moving them to a captive. They were all gung-ho. They had a great claims year. They got a flat renewal from their insurance carrier. And they said, oh, it's nice and easy. We're just going to take that flat renewal and renew as is. This year, claims didn't run as well, and they got a 22% rate increase, and they raised, hey, how about that self-insurance now? I'm like, well, now you have a lot of bad claims. You're going to go into self-insurance with 3 lasers and absorb a lot more risk. If you can get into this while your group is healthy, you can negotiate better contracts, not to be subjected to these lasers and things like that.
Interesting. Interesting. You guys have cooler words, lasers. We have LIFO. So last question I'll ask you, because we're getting towards the 15-minute mark. What is a self-funded carve out, pharmacy carve out?
So one of the fastest growing expenses within the medical insurance or your health insurance program is prescription drugs. When you contract with a insurance carrier to manage your self-funded program, they typically bundle the prescriptions. So Aetna is owned by CVS. CVS owns a pharmacy benefit management company. When they own that, they're able to, how do I say it without throwing the pharmaceutical companies under the PBMs under the bus, but there's a lot of money behind the scenes in the pharmacy management positions, such as rebates from the pharmaceutical companies, or the utilization of the drugs. They could vary the true cost of those drugs in with the medical program. So if you look at a carve out, you separate the medical plan from the pharmacy plan. You're able to negotiate separately and more aggressively with those pharmacy management companies and get a clearer picture of what your true pharmacy spend is without kind of blending those two expenses together. And it allows you, so you look at a drug like Humira, which could run as much as $60,000, or some of the new bioceuticals that are coming out. I heard there's a drug that's in testing right now. It's slated to cure a type of blindness in children, which is phenomenal, but it has a market price of about $3 million. So if you're a self-funded employer taking on, a pharmacy claim, and that you have a child who has this, degenerative eye disease is going to go blind, you have a $3 million pharmacy cost on this child. So having a pharmacy carve out allows you to better negotiate those prices, allows you to control those more, allows you to really also pick and choose the types of drugs you want to cover or not. And I know we're running tight. One of the other key things is the flexibility you have over the benefits that you cover for your employees. So I talked about pulling out of state mandated benefits earlier. When you self-fund, you're subject to federal ERISA guidelines, not the state mandated benefits, which then allow you to determine how you want to cover certain prescriptions. You want to carve out a certain prescription and not cover it, or carve out certain medical treatments and not cover it. You have more flexibility to do that when you're self-funded.
Great. So I appreciate all the information. It's a deep topic. So even if we dig over, this is a deep area that people really need to be considering, thinking about, and talking with the professionals about. I always appreciate that our clients talk with us about this, but the best people to talk to are somebody like Peter and Meeker Sharkey. As I said, we work with them, and they can provide you a lot of information to help you make very educated decisions. The health insurance, any insurance costs, you don't want to just be making on the fly. Give it the time and talk to the professionals about this. So, Peter, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank everybody for listening in. Have a good day.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.